Thursday evening. I'll just share my screen and we can directly get started with the session. Before starting the session, just wanted to know that this session we intend to cover the basics of Excel and also look into some of the slightly nuanced functions in Excel. So while in the audience we might have people who might be well versed with some of the things that we might be covering, but slowly and steadily, I think we'll catch up and we'll take the session to, I think, slightly nuanced function, as I mentioned. Directly sharing my screen. Please let me know if my screen is visible. Presentation specifically.
The widget is visible.
So basically, in Excel, I'll directly start with the Excel ribbon, and I'll just even better than the presentation, I'll directly open up an Excel file and I'll directly start explaining the contents of the ribbon that we would have. Basically, this is the ribbon, this top part as we call it, and we have different tabs from home, insert, page layout, etc. And in each of these tabs, different functionalities are grouped in certain way. For example, in home, we have font, which enables uh, to change the font size, bold, italics, and highlight the cells or change the color of the text. So I think very basic to start with, but nonetheless quite useful. Uh, so in this, I think like you also have borders here. We can choose which kind of border we would want for the text, how we would want to color the text, and highlight the text as well. Then we have alignment group. In alignment, we have left align, right align, top to bottom alignment. We also have merge and center function in which we can basically merge two cells and make them one cell. So that's how merge and center works. And this is basically about it. A wrap text function is also quite frequently used in which if the text increases the length of the particular cell, the text starts getting from like entering into the second line. So if I would have using the wrap text, basically uh, the text starts from a new line in the cell. This is the wrap text function. Then we have different formats in the number format, number group, basically different data types, general, number, currency, etc., short date, long date, and each of them have their own usage, and we'll be seeing them in greater detail as we cover the functions in the later part of the session. Also, apart from that, while I'm explaining the group and different functionalities Excel offers, it is also good practice to start using keyboard shortcuts in Excel as they save a lot of time. And keyboard shortcuts, basically, for almost every function that is out there, there are keyboard shortcuts in Excel, which make the job easier and faster. And the trick to go about shortcuts is either you can remember them or remember the keystrokes, or you can start discovering the shortcuts on your own, and you can then intuitively basically remember the shortcuts. For example, starting with the very basics, the navigation function, if I want to move on to the cell, so control plus control upward arrow, downward arrow, etc. These are really handy for quick navigation between different cells. And if I hold shift as well, then the cells get selected, and that's how the shortcuts function here. And also the trick about shortcuts is if you press the alt key, it basically assigns a letter to each of the different tabs, and based on that the shortcuts function. For example, now I've pressed alt here, so uh, if I press H as indicated in the Excel sheet, the home function will get activated, and then you can see different letters for each of the different functionalities. Let's say if I want to add a border here, so I'll select directly B, and within B, I want to have all borders here. So I'll select A. So now it has borders around the cell. So in general, the trick for basically adding borders to a cell is Alt HBA. And if you press these four keystrokes, the border function basically executes. And that is how basically you can learn different shortcuts out there. Similarly, Alt H, let's say I want to insert a new row here. So I select I insert, and insert sheet rows, I select R. So Alt HIR directly enters a new row here. Similarly for different columns and so on. So this is quite intuitive, and based on like post the completion of the session, we'll be sharing an Excel workbook with you, which would be having certain exercises intended to make you hands-on with Excel, and using those exercises, you'll have better familiarity with Excel, and you can basically use these shortcuts, and you can basically play around with Excel and see how you're comfortable with the same. So, uh, uh, going back to what we were covering previously, under the Home tab, we also have insert functions, insert sheet rows columns, delete functions, delete sheet rows columns, and format, which basically allows you to change the height of the row and width of the column. Also, it can also allow you to hide or unhide rows, columns, or sheets, basically. So that is also one functionality that we have here. Then moving on to the insert tab. Insert tab is basically used to insert a pivot table or insert a chart here. Rest of the functions like inserting text or symbols, they are also used, but majorly insert is used to add charts or pivot tables. Then moving on to the page layout tab. Page layout tab is not much used as it is primarily used while printing the Excel sheet. So in general, I haven't seen much usage of this specific tab. In the formula tab, we have different formulas grouped according to their particular area. For example, in financial formulas, we have net present value, dollar value, etc., etc. A lot of these functions. Mostly they would not be used, but it is better to have an idea of how these functions are grouped together. Similarly, auto sum functions, average functions, etc. These are also some of the functions that we'll be covering in the second half of the session here. In logical functions, we have and, if, false, etc. functions. Again, we also have functions for text, cleaning, date, and also mathematical functions. So the beauty of Excel is that it has a lot of functions. I think in excess of 500 we have functions, and that's how omnipresent Excel is, and that's how it makes for a universal use case, because the formulas are applicable in almost every domain that is out there. So that was about the formula tab. Within the data tab, we have groups to basically import data, to sort and filter data, and some other nuances within the data. So coming on to the review tab. Review tab again is used for proofing and checking certain things, or also adding certain comments. Mostly, again, it's not going to be used, the review tab. Then moving on to the view tab, you can basically choose to show or hide grid lines or the headings, that is the column headers that we have, and also the formula bar that we have. Other than that, the freeze pane function is also quite frequently used, again, which we'll be covering. So basically, that was about the Excel ribbon and the different tabs within it, and within each tab, the grouping of different functionalities and how they are used. Now, addition to that, we have a quick access toolbar, which basically allows you to customize certain commands which you think you are using very frequently. For example, I'm using adding border function quite frequently, just in case, or maybe sorting the data. If I'm using that function, so I can probably add the functionality of enabling the sort ascending function directly in the quick access toolbar, and one single click can be used to execute this. In addition to this, the shortcuts can also be implemented very smoothly. For example, if I want to add border here, as I covered earlier, I would be adding Alt HBA. That, those are basically four keystrokes here. But if I want to minimize the number of keystrokes, and if I want to do the job in less number of keystrokes, I'll basically add the border functionality to the quick access toolbar. And using that, I'll use a shortcut. I'll just press Alt, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 gets highlighted, right? For example, I haven't activated it now, but if I enable the command, a 5 would also appear here. So I'll just press Alt 5, and then the border function would execute itself. So rather than doing Alt HBA, I'll just do Alt 5, and then the time taken to execute the whole process is minimized. So again, the benefit of learning all these shortcuts and tips and tricks around Excel is when you'll be working in your internship, more or less I think you'll be interacting with Excel sheets at least on a daily basis, if not more. And within that, the more easily you process the data, the more easily you generate insights, the more easily you analyze, and the more hands-on you are with the data, the more proficient you look while doing your job role. So that is why there is such a huge importance of shortcuts. So I have primarily covered the ribbon and its functionalities till now. Kushal, if you have anything to add within that, please feel free to do so. And in the next, I'll be covering sort and filter functions post that.
No, I think you covered it pretty beautifully. The only thing is like we'll be sharing all the important shortcuts with you as well. I think Conclub will be sharing our deck and PPT. So in that you will find some range of formulas which we believe you can come on a day-to-day basis. So there, if you at the start you can just practice those formulas, and eventually, as like when you mentioned out, that intuitively you'll get to have understanding about the other formulas.
Yes, sir.
Digvijay, you are on
Yeah.
mute.
Uh, Previously, we covered a lot of theory. Now let's get directly hands-on with the data. And in the given data set, I have the data for athletes for a particular Winter Olympics. We have the name of the athlete, the sport they play, their nationality, age, weight in kg, and height. And now basically, I want to play around with this data and want to just uh, implement what I've learned, and also learn the sort and the filter functions. So basically, for filtering, I need to select all the data for which I need to create a filter. So using the, I can go about selecting data using my mouse like this, or I can just uh, select Control, Shift, and right arrow. That will select the top row, and then using that, I'll just click the down arrow as well. That will select the whole data. Now I want to create a filter on that. So one way to go about it is go on to this and click on filter. That adds the filter to the data. But since we are using shortcuts here, I'll just select all the data once. I'll press Alt, uh, I'll press A, and then T basically is the keystroke for the filter function. And Alt AT, I have the filter created for this data here. I'll also just add borders in the data. Now I can sort and filter data using again, if I click on this, it will show me different values. I can select 149, which is the lowest height. And if I click on OK, uh, we'll get the details of this athlete with the lowest height. But again, like one way to go about it is if I just press Alt and down arrow, uh, basically without using the mouse, this menu will pop up. And using the up arrow and the down arrow, I'll just select using spacebar. So I can basically do this very intuitively. I can also sort from the smallest to the largest number or the largest to the smallest number. Now that this is selected, just press spacebar and the sorting would be according to largest to the smallest. So this is how we go about arranging the data from the smallest to the largest and so on. And Excel is quite intuitive. So this is a numerical value. So it realizes that you can sort this data from smallest to largest or largest to smallest. But for values that involve alphabetics, it sorts from A to Z or Z to A. So it is again quite intuitive in that manner. Similarly, for nationality, we can sort from A to Z and so on. This was around basically the function for sort and filter. Again, uh, adding a few shortcuts here. If I press Alt AC, then the filter would get cleared and the data would appear as is without any filter. So that was about it. One feature that we have here is, let's say if I want if I have highlighted specific cells using a particular color here. So I'll just select green here. So the use case for this is while I was, let's say, manually going through the data, I found certain anomalies and then I highlighted the cells. Now I want to see all these cells in one place, like what are these data values which have certain anomalies. And in this, Excel is again quite intuitive. So if you click on Alt and down arrow, and if you select filter by color, it gives you the option to filter by color as well, in which the green highlighted cells all appear together. So this is again quite a useful function, a useful feature. If we have multiple colors here, it would also give you the option to filter by multiple colors. Uh, that's majorly about the sort and filter function. Uh, I think post this, we'll be taking up certain functions which are most commonly used. And after covering the functions, then we'll be taking up the pivot table. So from here on, handing it to Kushal for the next part of this.
Thanks a lot, Digvijay. So I'll just be sharing my screen. Just a second. Is is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll be starting with the if function. So basically, the functions I've mentioned here is the functions I believe you are going to come up the most in your internship. This function basically summarizes the entire analysis part. So, like if you want to analyze a data, if you want to sort a data, these are the some functions which I believe will help you a lot. Now, starting with the if function, it is a very good function because it helps us automate decision making. Let's say here we have been given some transactions and we have been given some dates, like when the order was placed and when was the delivery done. Now we want to check, uh, let's say we consider that any delivery after the day 6th is late. So using if function, we can analyze that. So we'll go with the syntax if our logical test is that the day's delivery should be just a second, greater than 5. So uh, if yes, value if true, sorry, it should be less than 6. Value if true should be on time. And one thing we have to notice is that all the conditions we are imposing in a if function should be under a parenthesis. So if we want to achieve a certain value, we should mention what exactly we need it to come out. So if our output is on time, we need to put it under two double counts. Secondly, value is false if the our logical test is not getting the correct answer, then it would be late. So as you can see, because the delivery day was more than 6, it has written a value late. And for 5, you will see for 5 and 3, it was on time. Now, starting on, I am just covering some small data points because it will help you understand the data better. But more in the at the end, I've also used some large data set which we can help we can use. Now, for summing function, it helps us find the sum total of a value considering some logical test. Let's say we want to find out the total sales of only the East region. So the synthesis is sum ifs. Now the thing is we have two sum if. One is sum if and one is sum ifs. The difference between the both is sum if only gives the only provide the sum of a cell specified by only one condition. However, in sum ifs we can add more than one condition as well. Let's say we want to find out the sales of region east and only the sales of product puzzles. Let's say we have two puzzles, so I'll explain that in the end. Sum range is this. One thing also we should know is that we should always log the formula, log the range we are trying to add. So here the key is function f4. Our criteria is that the sum of entire region of east is to be determined. So we'll select the region is criteria range is this, and we only want the sum of region is, so the criteria is east. So it gives us the total summation of the east region. And similarly for west, we can just do a track down and do it. Now let's say we want to find out the sum of region east and only for product puzzles. So here we'll try to use two conditions. First, the sum range, as we have mentioned earlier, is going to be this. Our criteria range 1 is this. And we just want to find the criteria for region east. Now, our criteria range 2 is the products. And we only want to find out the summation of the product puzzles. So as you can see, there were only this many puzzles in the east region. So it gave out the value 194. Now coming on to COUNTIF, it is also a similar function, but just instead of the summation, it gives the total count of a particular region. So let's say we want to find out how many times the region west came up in the data set. So and our criteria is it should be belonging to the region west. We want to find out how many times the region west came up in the data set. So the answer is also one thing, if you have any question and any doubt in whatever we are trying to explain, you can put it in the chat or you can bring it up at the end of the session. Now this is a very important formula because it helps us combine data set of more than many rows and many columns. So we have been given a data where first name is in another column and last name is in another column, and we want to add this. So The function concatenate helps in that. Our text one is this. Now we have to keep in mind that if we add this directly, there won't be any spaces between the two words, and it will give the data as this Sarah Thompson. So in the formula itself, we have to add another text which is just a space comma this. So it will help us give a space between the two words. Similarly for the rest of it. Now, let's say we want to do the exact opposite of what we did. We want to separate these two data. So we have a very good function known as text to column. Here we can select the entire data, go on to data tab. In data tab, we have text to column. Now we just need to give a space. So, as you can see, I've already given a space in the other section. So it is you just have to go to the other delimiter, add a space over there, and it will give out two columns with the data separated. Going to the left and right, this is also a very nice function because it helps us separate the data into parts which could be used from either left, right, and also there is one more thing, mid. So let's say we just want to find out the client ID, and we know the client ID is the first two letters of a reference data. So we'll go left, that our text is this, and because we want the first two numerical characters of the data set, we'll press to enter. So it will gives out exam. Now when we find out, now we know the registration code is, let's say, the last letter which is appearing in the client data. So here we'll go from the right side, use the reference data, and because we know it is the last letter of the data set, we'll just press 1 and it will give out S. The thing is, if we want more than one number or one more than, we can just change it over here. We can add 4 and it will give out the last 4 letters. Now for another function is mid. In mid, uh, you just need, it is similar. The only thing is you have to identify which is going to the start numerical of the middle sentence. So let's say we want to mention that it is the third number which third letter which is appearing in the data. We'll write 3, and let's say we want total 4 characters in it. So it gives out the number of this. So this is a very nice function which can help us sort and clean data very efficiently. And also I want to add another example content. So let's say let's consider a CV. So usually we have a CV in this format. And we knew so because as we can see, the only delimiter over here is underscore. We can just select the data, and using the same text to column, we have to add a underscore over here, and it will devouse, as you can see, it separated the entire data into 5 components, which was the course, my batch, my first name, my last name, and the CV type. Now coming to VLOOKUP, I can't stress it enough, but VLOOKUP is one of the most important functions used in any industry because it helps us find the reference of data from one data source to another. We can simply link more than 2 to 3 data sources. It is great for combining data from different lists into one, or we can also use it to compare two lists for matching or missing items. Uh, so the some of the conditions which you need to keep in mind is, let's say you are looking for a name, so the first reference data should be always in the first column when you are using the VLOOKUP. So here we have been given a reference data, which is this table, and we have been given this data point. So as you can see, the name column appears in both the tables. Using this, we can populate the data in the region table by the following syntax. So VLOOKUP is the syntax. We are now looking for the name function. So Francisco Chen, if it appears in another table, it will give the output of the region in this table. Now table array is this. Now as you can see, and Devon is in the first column and region is in the second column, and we want to find out what is the region of Francisco Chang, and we can see the column appears in at the segment 2. So we'll just write 2 over here, which is the column index number, and now it gives out two hypotheses. Either it is true, even if it's a approximate match, or it is going to it's false if it is an exact match. So because we want an exact match, we have to use false, or you can simply write 0, which is the for that. Now as you can see, it simply populated the data because Francisco Chen appears in the east region, and using the autofill, the entire data gets populated. Another is if error. Now you have populated a data, but a certain data point doesn't appear in the data. Uh, so if error functions help us eliminate that. What it does is it gives out the value if there is no error. So before that, I'll show you the example of what I was trying to say. It's lookup value Francisco Chen. Table value this. We log the data cell so that it doesn't reference to the upcoming columns. Column index number is 2 and our range lookup is 0. So as you can see, the first data point is not present in this table, and it gives out any error. So to prevent that, we can have a if error function, which is if error is present in the data set, it can we can write the value of a error if it is appearing. So we can say so if any uh, I'll change this data. So let's say Garner. So as you can see, wherever the error is there in a file, it will give out an output that name doesn't exist in the given data. Now, as I've said that I'll now use it on a extensive database, which will help us understand the countif and summing function even better. Um, so now we want to find the total count of a region LHN in the entire data. So as I mentioned, I'll go COUNTIF. I know the range is this, and criteria is I9. So it gives out the total number of time region LHN appears in the entire table. Now populating the sheet, it gives out how many times any of this particular region come. Now sales is a summation property. So now instead of COUNTIF, we'll use SUMIFs over here. SUMIF of SUMIFs, if more than two conditions are there, we use SUMIFs, and if more than two conditions are there, we use COUNTIF. I said range is going to be this. Our criteria is that it should be of only the region LHN. So and the sum range is going to be this sales. And similarly, by sum and count by area, uh, we can find out the total number of time area L appeared in the table, and total sum of the areas, total sales of the area L. This is a now this VLOOKUP, this table has more than four, this has total number of 4 columns, and we want to find out what is the fictional honesty index of the lady Uma Bharati. So for this, lookup value is Uma Bharati, table array, because we can see the fictional honest index is coming up at table number 4. We'll write 4, column number 4, and we'll see this. And we can see the fictional honest index of Uma Bharati is 3. This could be used whenever we need to find out a data associated in another table. Uh, Here I'll slightly explain some conditional formatting and everything. And after that, I think Digvijay can take over to explain the pivot charts and as well also some dashboarding. Now, conditional formatting is used to help make the data more presentable and also to give more insights out of a data. Now we can either use the pre-existing conditions, like if the cell value hmm, uh, if let's say if the cells value are greater than 100, it will fill the entire sheet with dark red text. So as you can see, whenever cell value were greater than 100, it give out this sheet. This is what we use in conditional formatting. We can also make it more, we can like set up some more rules that we want to specifically highlight the top 10 items, or we can make some data bars or gradient fill which will add a color data to represent the value. The higher the value, the more prominent the color would be. So as you can see in the data, whenever the value was more, uh, the data was more prominent, and whenever the value was late, the data was not so prominent. Uh, Digvijay, do you want to take up and with pivot table and other things?
Yes, at this point, just pausing to ask if anyone has any questions regarding any of the concepts that we covered or any questions in general.
So I had a question. So when you use the formula in the first cell, and then you said we can populate it to the entire column. So what's the shortcut you use to like copy paste the whole formula in the column?
I'll again share my screen. Just a second. Can you see my sheet?
Yes.
Okay, just a second. So the formula uses, if you can see, a very small box appears at the corner of a cell. When you double click on it, automatically populate the entire sheet. Another way we can do this is just add a formula and use Control plus E. So because my like formula is set on a manual mode, it is automatic mode. Just a second. Hmm. So either you can directly press this small square at the end of your cell. It will fill out the entire data with the sheet whenever there is well, let's say I just I add one more column east and again press the square. It will auto populate it, or else we can simply press Control plus E. It will also give out the same region. We should first need to first select the region and then press Control plus V. It will give out the same value. Similarly here, let's say if I press this east and press on the small square, it will auto populate the sheet.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Shall I have a doubt regarding that text to column formula that you showed? As you mentioned that we can divide the name accordingly. If a person has a middle name, I mean, there has to be consistency around the names, right? Otherwise, I mean, how will it function then if one has three names or four names maybe? I mean, let's say one has a middle name, not only just two names. So how will it divide them?
So are you talking about this function where I separated the data into two
No,
columns, or
here in MBA FT23 Kushal Agarwal, so this
uh,
one, if some had your name been Kushal Kumar Agarwal, then how would have it functioned then? I mean, there has
it would have functioned in a similar manner, because the thing is, the condition I used uh, was that whenever there is an underscore, it will separate the data after the underscore and before the underscore. So let's say I have written Kushal. Uh, I have added a middle name as well here,
yeah.
and now I am using the same function. So, so for the shortcut for is Alt ADS. Uh, because I am using a specific uh, logic test, which is to separate the data before underscore and after the underscore, it is going to give me the same result. And it doesn't matter how many letters or characters appears in the data.
So if we want to divide it, I mean,
Hmm.
we had a good number of data, maybe 20 or
Hmm.
30 names. I mean, in this
Hmm.
format, and I want to divide it according to course, batch, first name, middle name, last name. So how will I do
Hmm.
that so that the consistency is maintained? I mean, there is no
Uh,
overlap.
okay. So the thing is, if the data is not consistent, we'll have to use two or three functions to first clean the data. Let's say someone has not written the. There are many people like who will write their CV as like this, and some will write it like this. So in this, we'll first have to eliminate the unclean data. For that, you'll have to use two or three more functions, which I think I'll explain at the end of the session, or you can just personally text me and I'll tell you, because this will involve slightly bit more time.
Okay, okay, got it.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Anything else? I'll be sharing this practice sheet with you as well. So you can just practice uh, some VLOOKUP function like in this sheet itself. Let's say, okay, I'll show you one more thing, which is eliminating duplicates. So I have selected the entire salesperson data, and you can see a lot of times data is duplicated. In the data table itself, there is a function which removes duplicate, which is next to the text to columns. Uh, in this, you can directly duplicate all the data, delete the duplicates, and unique value came out, because the heading it always consider the first name as the heading, so we'll have to adjust for that. Now you can use the sumif function to find out the total. So as you can see, it was quantity price. So one thing we'll do is to find out total sales, which is, as you can see, it's going to be quantity into the price. Again, clicking on the small box to auto populate. Now, because as we have already eliminated the duplicate values, we can now find the individual total sales for each of these salesperson. So which will be, as I've explained, sum if our range is going to be this. Our range is going to be this. Our criteria is that it should be from Austin, and our sum range is going to be this. So I think why it's not coming out of it.
We have to select like for some range column M, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I will have this. Hmm. Just disappear.
M 222021, like these two ranges have to have the same I think notation.
Hmm. Yeah, so I missed this out. So the notations for both the sum range and criteria range should be same. Locking the both of them. Now we can auto-populate the sheet each of the names. Austin Watson. Same, we can find the countifs as well. How many times Austin appeared in the entire data set, and we can also find out how many quantities these guys sold. So this is a very good practice sheet if you guys want to practice some basic sum if countif functions. I think if there are no doubts, well, Digvijay can take up some conditional formatting, pivoting, and dashboarding.
I think this point is a very good point to start with pivot tables. As we have seen, we calculated sales for different sales steps using the sum if function. Now, pivot table is a very easy way to get around that without having to write so many formulas. Right. Let me just calculate the total sales here once. Right, we have the total sales here. Now, we just want to generate insights from this data, and pivot table is a very powerful way to generate insights from that data. The data as we have it now is basically called unpivoted data, in which each row has its own unique value. For example, here we have the company name, the state, region, salesperson, product, and order date, ship date, etc. And there is no aggregation of data. So insights have to be generated using aggregation of data. For example, when we calculated the sales for each of the sales people, it was done using summation of all their sales. Basically, all the rows which contained Watson in them, those got added up, and then the total sales for Watson came up. Now we select the whole data. Then I go to insert and I select pivot table. Basically, it will ask me if I want to have the pivot table in a new worksheet or an existing worksheet. I'll just select new worksheet. And then we have to select values. Now Excel basically identified the column headers here, right? So it identified company name to total sales. Like these are the column headers that we have here. Now these fields are identified, and below we have four boxes which basically columns, rows, values, and filters. So we need to drag each of these column headers for the insights that we need to generate. For example, I want to generate the sales for the salespeople. So I drag salespeople and I place it into the rows box. Now see, it automatically lists down the how many the 9 salespeople that we have without using to have a remove duplicates function. Now for each salespeople, I want to calculate total sales. So I want to have total sales and the summation of values. If I drag it here, the total sales is automatically calculated. So you can see how powerful this is, and it simply is simple drag and drop, and based on that, a lot of insights can be generated. Now, sum of total sales, right? Now I want to have the quantity. I drag it out of here, and I click quantity. So this is the sum of quantity. Similarly, if I drag price here, so sum of price does not make any sense because uh, what do I have as an insight if I'm summing up prices? So in that, we can also tamper around with this. If we click on this and click on value field settings, I can have some count average. Let's see, I want to see the average price of product for a particular salesperson. So average of price comes out for Anderson. So the total products that he sold, the average of all of those is $254, something on those lines. I also can see the maximum or minimum price. So maximum of price is 349. So that's how powerful it is. Now let's say I want to have for each of these sales people the sales across different months. So I put months and I drag into the columns value. And then in that total sales, I'm dragging it here. So you can see clearly, like for different salespeople across each month, the total sales are generated. And this is just using four simple operations. And you don't need to necessarily have formulas for sum ifs and count ifs. If you just want to see insights for the data at a very short level, that is there. Apart from that, if we see the data, then we can also generate insights for different column headers. Like I can generate total sales for different state, regions, etc., etc. So I just drag sales people out of here, drag region into rows. We have 5 regions, and the total sales. This is basically the total sales across different regions. So once this is done, right, we need to represent the data in a graphical format. And now comes the charts and the features Excel has around that. Let's just copy this data. And this is the data that we have. This is the region, and this is the total sales. I want to generate charts for that. I have selected the data, insert, go on to the recommended charts if you're not very sure about which chart you would want, because Excel automatically selects a good chart that would fit in for this data. Now it can basically depict the data using bar graph or using a pie chart. And it is also so intuitive, like it uses a map to basically map out different regions and then gives the sales. Let's select bar graph for now. Now, this is a very, very simple chart. And in Excel chart, we have very specific functionality regarding what we can see and what we cannot see. If we click on the plus button, we have the option to choose which of the chart element that we want or we do not want. If I do not want to see the axis, I click on this and then the axis are eliminated. But again, that would serve no purpose. If I want to see the values here, so I click on data labels, and clearly the data labels are populated. So this is not looking very clean as of now. So we can also have the option to change the position of the data label as well. We can have the data label in center, inside end, inside base, and so on. And data callout also, again, this is another way to represent the data. Data labels is done. Then we also have the legend. Legend in case of 2, 3, let's say if I have the total sales here, I also want to have, let's see, a region total quantity also. Let me just calculate the total quantity for the different regions. We have the total quantity as well. I'm just removing this chart. I'm selecting all the data, and then I go to recommended chart. Now it shows basically this as well. So the total quantity is quite less as compared to total sales. So just for the purposes of better representation, let's multiply each of these by 100. Now the chart becomes much better than what we had previously. You can see the total sales and the total quantity. Again, you can have different charts around it. You can have it this way. You can also have a scatter plot, etc., etc. So again, a lot of options and features are available, and it is totally up to the user how he makes the best use of the different options available. Let's say I click on the pie chart. Necessarily, pie chart might not be the best representation for this kind of data, but still Excel makes a pie chart of this data. That was about the pivot table and the pie charts. Any questions that we have in a pivot table or the charts to this point? Great. I think moving on, before we move on to dashboarding and all, I think we have learned a lot of Excel functions. We have learned different parts of the ribbon and how to use the functions, different arguments within them, and also pivot table and the charts. Now, just as an exercise, I'm going to take some data that we have. I'm going to use all of these, and I'm just going to show how powerful Excel can be when you're analyzing data. Just let me share my screen again for a bit. So, while I was looking for data, not much data was available, so I decided to have something with this data, however redundant this might seem at this point. So basically, I'll use multiple Excel functions at once, and I'll see how we can combine different data sets to generate insights. Basically, these are the internal assessment marks that we had in the first semester. Now, taking the sum of each of these marks, I've calculated the sum, and then basically in other attendance sheet that we have, let's just use VLOOKUP once to populate the marks for each of the student. Now I want to look up the email address because that's a unique value. I want to look that up in this table, and within that I want to have the 12th column because that is the total marks and exact match we would want to have. This basically comes out. Now, just for the purposes of creating a dashboard out there, uh, I'm taking the first letter of each of the name, and then I'll use that to just uh, create some insights out there. So using the left function, I have the first letter of each name. Let's assign also a random year of birth uh, between, let's say, 1995 to 2001. Very randomly assigning year of birth to each of them. So this is the one, and total score. So just very briefly giving an idea. So I want to have a dashboard which allows me to select the name, the basically the first letter of each of the name, and then the year of birth, and then have the total average score for that particular value, and have that presented graphically or something like that. So I'll just enter filters here. So I'll select the first. Using data validation, I think we can have drop downs for the year of birth, and so on. So I'll just take account of the unique values for the date of birth, year of birth. Using the data tab here, I'm using the data validation. I can have I can limit selection using a list, and in this list I'll just select this. In this cell, the user can only select values from 1995 to 2005. You know, the first letter, of course, A to Z, we have, but again, let me just remove duplicates from here. We have 20 unique values there. So not all the letters are covered. So in that, let's say I want to calculate the average total marks of the students. And number of students that fall in the criteria. So that average is equal to average ifs. The average range would be basically this. Criteria range one would be for year of birth. Criteria one would be here as we are making the user select. Criteria range two would be the name of the first letter. Of course, this. Yes, let me select the values. I'll just take this formula. Average ifs, I'll change it to count ifs. Let's take student with the letter B and year of birth being 1996. There would be no such students. Just adding count ifs. Criteria count ifs. Zero students, right? Let's take this also. For example, we have A and 2000. So let's see how many students are there whose first name is starting with A and those who are born in 2000. We have 5 such students, and let's calculate the averages.
As you can see, you can create a very dynamic dashboard using the methods which is teaching. Like you can select the first letter of the name, or you can select the year of birth, and the values will change as per the input.
Right. Now, just let's add a chart element to this as well. We have still no point representing the number of students within the right now. But when we have 2, 3 variables, 2, 3 different values here, these charts really start to make sense. Let's start by changing values. Let's select B. You can, while it's not directly visible, but these charts are also changing the values here based on our inputs. So let's again say students. Okay, we have 2 students who are born in 2000. The values are automatically changing. And so on. So this is how basically dashboard is. You have 2, 3 different values, 2, 3 KPIs that or input variables that are there, and you can see how on the change of input variables, average marks and number of students, it changes. And the same is represented using the chart here.
You can also create a dashboard using the pivot tables. Like you can, as Digvijay already showed you, that you can create a pivot chart, and out of that pivot chart, you can create a uh, like chart out of it. And after that, inserting some slices, you can also make one dynamic like. So even in like you can make it either through the pivot chart, or you can use the method which Digvijay showed. Uh, Now, like as we are towards the end of this PPT session, Excel workshop, the thing is like we know we haven't we missed out on some of the things, but the thing is during the course of your internship, you can anyways reach out to either me or Digvijay anytime, and we'll be surely helping you. Uh, Apart from this, anything else do you want us to cover in the session, and do you want us to ask anything? Like right now, we can also help in that. And otherwise, as mentioned, like I and Digvijay are always available during the entire internship duration. And whenever you feel that you need help with something, you can always reach out to us.
So
Thank you, Kushal. Thank you, Digvijay. So we'll also
Uh,
be, oh, there's a question. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yes, Manvi, we can even change the colors inside of Digvijay, can you share
yes,
your
yes, just hold it.
slide one again? Yeah.
In each of the chart, right? If you click on this, basically format shape allows you to change the color of the shape change the outline. Add shape effects. And when there are, let's say, uh, more than a few bars available, you can change the color scheme accordingly as well. And you can also change the chart type as well.
And even if like more than like 4 to 5 bars are there in a bars, let's say a bar chart, you can individually go for each of those bars and you can like assign a color as per your need. Like you can just select that bar, it will give out an option to change the color. So Excel is very dynamic in that sense that you can practically portray the data as per your needs, and it is very flexible.
So about adding
Devashish,
the, yeah, brand
yeah.
color set, as such, brands do have certain colors, and those colors have their own hex values. So those, you can also select the hex values. So as such, there is no brand colors in Excel, but you can manually select the brand colors according to the hex value or according to the color that you have in mind.
Anything else? Yes, and also we'll be like sharing this, sharing both the solved and the practice sheets, which you can use to practice the thing. And one more thing, like Bharat Garg from batch of 22 has also shared a deck which he used to explain the Excel workshop last year to the batch of 22. We'll be sharing that as well, and it also has some like basic explanations of all the ribbons, all the functions, and it will help you get the fundamental understanding.
Sure, Kushal. Thank you, Kushal and Digvijay. So, guys, all the material that Kushal is talking about and the recording of this session will be shared with you. We'll try to do it as soon as possible. And once again, I'd like to thank these guys. This session was really crucial for all of us before the start of internship. And they are saying that they'll be available throughout the internship. And I think that's a big thing to say. But yes, again, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, everyone, for coming up, and I hope everyone had a good time during the session.
Thank you so much, everyone. Hope everyone got to learn something, and hope this was of some use to every one of us attending the meeting.
Yes, definitely. Okay, I'll be ending the meet now. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.